Welcome to the PPSS Success Show. My name is Fong, and today we have another great guest. He comes highly recommended by a lot of people out there, especially those in the real estate area. He has been in a lot of different industries, and he's been able to make them very, very successful, and then move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Starting from being in the Navy to having a law firm to then having a marketing firm, and then now he has a property tech company, which is revolutionizing the whole affordable housing market and industry completely. He's been able to really merge real estate and AI and social impact, and also been able to help a lot of people become more successful in that area as well by sharing his knowledge, sharing his wisdom, sharing his tech to help them proceed to greater things. So please welcome a real estate and property tech expert, Mr. Christopher Wise.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. And I just want to address the fact that your last name is Wise. And that is a last name I wish I've had because nobody can pronounce my last name. So having that last name, you must be a wise individual.
I tell everybody because my accent will kick in and they won't be able to understand me. So I always say wise guy. It's wise, like wise guy. And they're like, oh, okay, got it. So I still struggle, it seems, but I think that's the Texas accent coming out.
Mhm. What do you think is more stressful or more pressure? Having the last name Wise or being named Beautiful?
Oh, yeah. That's a
Let's
tough
say
one.
let's say your name was Beautiful Wise.
Probably beautiful. Yeah, I think it's so subjective. I guess wise is too, but you do one little thing and everyone's like, oh, there goes that.
Awesome. Well, once again, thanks for being here. Always a pleasure speaking with people like yourself who has done so many great things and has scaled so many businesses and become successful and also passing that knowledge down. So if you could please share with us that journey from where you were to who you are today and all the ups and downs that you kind of went through and how did you go over them?
Oh, there's a ton of the ups and downs, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what gets you here. So, yeah, I started the law firm after serving in the military. Was a SWIC in the Navy. Did that for 6 years. Got out. Went to law school. Never intended to be a lawyer. That was never the intent. I actually worked at a registered investment advisory firm. And that's really where I kind of got that understanding of, how do people look at real estate? How do investors look at evaluating different vehicles? And then from there, 2020 hit, wanted to make an impact and do more of a social impact. So went the route that I said I wasn't going to go. I started the law firm and focused on family law and correcting a lot of the inefficiencies that are in that industry and still are in that industry. And then from there, realized that, our day and time, with how much we have to do on the internet and how much of the world runs off of really AI now, but, back in 2020, it is mainly the internet. I mean, you're talking about, most companies are really a digital company that sells a service. And that might be legal services, or it might be, whatever. It could be widgets, whatever it may be. But because that need to be relevant and present and kind of all over the place at all given times, that's when I realized, well, how difficult would it be to really start coding our own stuff and learning how to get into AI really. And that was, back in 2022 is when I started working on that. And AI wasn't really a topic. I mean, it just wasn't really that well known. A lot of the machine learning tools were out there, and obviously the programming through, Python and C++. Obviously, these things have been around for a while. So that's really where that start came from is, let's look at this from a marketing sales side, and then, that spin into, a customer service and hospitality side, which is a personal opinion for me in the legal industry. And then as, I started building these platforms really just for us, that's when I realized, there's these other archaic industries that have these massive inefficiencies. And it's not that no one's addressing it's that the third party vendors tend to be focused in certain markets. And so, and that's pretty obvious with the cost of some of these things. And so when we look at it, that's really what started that obsession over, well, how hard is it to build our own IoT system? How hard is it to start building these machine learning tools that address the inefficiencies with maintenance and really property management and that spurred into locks and cameras, and how do we create kind of that next wave or revolution of property tech, but do it in a way that can be affordable in the Class C space, and that's what we focus on, is the Class C space. And so that obviously has its own hurdles, right? I mean, uh, things that people are accustomed to, from insurance to lending and all this other, all these other things, to actually developing these products that um, can cash flow with a Class C type of property versus a lot of the stuff that we see today is in luxury Class A, and it looks amazing, but frankly, it just kind of prices itself out of the Class C market. And that's kind of the path that I took, and that's how we started generating the products. Is really a plug and play, and hope that this new product is the thing that will revolutionize, and then we input it, and then we see real quickly if it does or if it does not work, and then we're adjusting on how to make that more efficient and make sense.
Mm. We'll jump into that a little bit more. But before I get there, I wanted to ask, is it common for people to jump into law with no intention of becoming a lawyer?
That's a great question. I think it's becoming more popular
Uh,
now. I'm not so sure if that was the case, maybe, 90s, early 2000s. I think, you can never be hindered by a law degree. I think it helps in every industry, and especially understanding how to maneuver in certain situations. But the law is constantly changing. The rules and regulations are constantly changing. So being able to have that side of your brain to access and understand how to maneuver that helps
yeah.
everywhere. But I do think that it's becoming more and more prevalent now, where you're seeing a lot of individuals go to law school, maybe not with the intent to actually practice law, but with the intent to use that skill set in different avenues.
Mhm. I guess you were ahead of its time and very, very smart at doing so because having that knowledge really allows you to navigate through like the real estate space, the business space, because hey, you're looking at law stuff all the time. You're looking at legal papers and documents, and I, for one, get so bored with reading that kind of stuff. But for someone who's like already immersed into that space, it should be a breeze for you to go through that document. Um, when it comes to that law firm that you created and you built and you scaled, then you scaled a marketing company. What would you say is the keys for you to be able to scale those two companies so successfully?
I think, at the basic level, it's understanding, when to maneuver to buy back your time. I mean, Dan Martell says it perfectly, and I've actually talked with him and worked or coached under him for a while, and he says it the best, and it's when you have that opportunity to replace your time with something that's more efficient, and that you can drive the ball forward, more, yeah, I'll say quickly, but when you can drive it faster that way by finding these individuals who can, do the job and are efficient and well versed in what they're doing, it makes sense to hand it off. And there's things that I'm very, very bad at, and so finding someone who loves that and that's their space, all the better. And being able to understand, even from a financial standpoint, just P&Ls and balance sheets, and understanding when is that right time to make that shift, and being able to track that. I'm a massive data guy, so I'm constantly analyzing data and trying to figure out where we fall on that spectrum to start replacing more and more time. And it's not just me, but the individuals that work for me. What could I get them doing that they're great at, and finding time that they're spending on things that they can do. It's just we can find somebody who's more efficient and loves doing that, than drag them into it. So a lot of it's data analysis, and then a lot of it is understanding that you can't do everything, and frankly, I'm not good at everything, and so I've got to find people who are great at that space, and then convince them to work with me.
Well, it takes a very great leader to recognize that, yeah, you can't do everything, but a great leader also is able to motivate and inspire those who can do it to do it on your behalf or to do it for the company's behalf or to do it for the whole big picture. So, what are your keys to being able to motivate those employees or those people to really put in the effort of helping you build something that may or may not be theirs, but there's someone involved?
Yeah, I think that the key there is learning when to be quiet. There's you got to learn when to be quiet and then also take it in. I mean, there's different manager styles. I think we've all heard of these, and you can definitely look into what is the best route with your character or personality, and try to take it that way. What I've found is it's better to flip that and for the owners and managers to look at the employees or those individuals that they're working with and see how they best operate. I mean, the great example is, in the military, you can get yelled at a ton and you're going to do the thing because you're just going to get yelled at a lot. And, that drives a lot of people. Well, you can't really do that in other industries. It doesn't resonate well and you don't get things done. The culture falls apart. And so, being able to understand that you may not have the answer, and so be quiet and listen and take it in, and you don't have to make a decision in 2 seconds. You don't have to be the first to speak. You don't need to be the first to come up with a solution every time, and sit back and let your team do what you brought them in to do. The best thing that I was ever told is be the last one to speak, and then if you don't know what to say, then don't say anything. And that was great advice because there's times that we'll run into issues or problems that no one really has the solution, and anyone's suggestion is a suggestion, but we don't know if that's the right path or not. And so take the time to be quiet, learn, get as much information as you can, and then make the decision. And ultimately, those decisions rest on my shoulder. There's no pointing fingers and saying that it was this person's idea or that person's idea. But take ownership of that and understand that you're going to fail at some things,
Yeah.
and that's not a problem. The problem is when you can't adjust and learn and grow from it. And so that's how I try to do it for sure.
Very important. I love that part where you said that if you don't have anything to add, shut up. Because there's always that one
Yeah,
person who just wants to
exactly.
get their last word in, but you basically just repeated what everybody else has said and you just wasted everybody's time. So, yeah,
Yeah, it's
good
like the
point there.
meetings. If you have 400 meetings, then you don't have a plan.
Exactly. So there lots of people out there go, you know what, I don't want to change my business or I don't want to change careers because I don't want to waste all the stuff that I've done to get to where I am to get today, kind of thing, right? You went from being in the Navy, attorney, law firm, marketing company to your successful prop tech now. Now, what would you have say that are takeaways from each one of those segments that allowed you to make another really successful company that it would not be as successful if it wasn't for this element here, this element here, and this element here.
Yeah, you're always learning, and I always joke that I learn everything the hard way. And so, unfortunately, that maybe that's just me, but you get these experiences from these industries, and those are great tools if you take a step back and allow them to be tools to learn from. And so, there's yeah, I think if anyone's owned a business, they've experienced hardship, whether it be financial or marketing, you can just go down the list. There's always something that comes up that you don't know, how to adjust or what to do. And you make the decision, and that may not be, the quote unquote best decision or even what would have been the top three had you known what that would lead to down the road. And so you have to learn those lessons. Elon Musk says it best when he says, I think he says something to the effect of when you own a business, it's like chewing on glass and staring off to the abyss. That's a great quote. It's one of my favorite quotes because, I mean, there's a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of truth in, it sounds great to change industries and to see some level of success in doing so, but there's a lot of hardship with that. And I think Alex Ramosi says it best when he says that you're resetting. So you get all this growth from that one industry, and you start to make a really good name in that industry. And then if you start a new industry, you start back from zero, and then you have to make up the ground and go from there. And I think that's just the reality. I think some individuals are they're able to absorb that and take that risk and be able to understand that that is a very big risk on shifting these industries and trying to drive change. And I've always held on to that social impact, whether it be law or marketing or real estate. But if you have that North Star, I think it makes it a little bit easier on shifting these industries. But you also got to, you have to do things that make sense, and there's writing on the wall that you have to kind of foretell as you move through these industries and understand where it's going and why. And I know AI is such a hot topic right now and has been, for the last couple of years, really. And it's got a lot of people worried. And I think that understanding what those capabilities are and where that's driving us, it's almost like we're back in the 90s with the computers, and trying to comprehend what this is going to mean for everybody.
Mm, exactly. Well, there's that saying where the conception and implementation, right? Something that works very well in one industry. If you take that same concept and apply it here, it's going to have a completely different effect and completely set you apart from everybody else in that industry that doesn't have that ability to implement that. So something that's very, very important. So back to the prop tech world. Can you share with us a scenario where okay, somebody's kind of challenged with this issue, and you go in and go, you know what, this is what we can do, and we could completely streamline it, and it's now affordable or it's now in the black kind of thing.
Yeah, a great example is predictive maintenance, right? And so we have what a lot of people refer to as these IoT sensors. You can attach them to all sorts of things, HVACs and water heaters, and you can just go down the list. But the idea or the concept behind that is to be able to tell those efficiencies and see where you're at in the life cycle, and you're trying to jump in front of any kind of maintenance that could be around the corner, and in doing so save yourself potentially thousands if not more by having that data to collect and understand where you're at with that life cycle. We took that concept and we said, okay, well, the sensors are great, but typically those type of sensors are about $500, depending on what you're looking at, whether it be like an HVAC, and some of these apartments have numerous HVACs. And so when you start to look at that cost, it becomes expensive when you're trying to stay in the Class C space. And so that led us to build a predictive maintenance model that we use internally that is able to tie in with AI, all of the model numbers and companies and data collect everything that we would need to get within about a 3% ratio of efficiency. And we build it in house. Aside from time, and that's its own conversation, you're not really spending money on evaluating, okay, where do we think the life cycle is of this? And if we're in that percentage of margin, I'd rather be in a 3% margin of error than be 40,000 on sensors and, save the 3% margin. I'd rather, gear it and save the money.
Right.
And so, that's an example of something that we looked at and said, okay, this is technology that exists right now, but how do we improve it, but also keep the costs low and make it to where it's still hitting those metrics that we need to hit, but utilize it across the board versus having to do the manual maintenance and labor on those type of sensors anyways.
You mentioned it, I think, at the beginning there about the Class C space, and that is somewhat the forgotten real estate market. Why is it forgotten, and why would you bet big on that area now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we love the Class C area. That's the area that we're in. I've heard this so many times over the last couple of years that this Class C space is this forgotten market. It's so weird. It's cyclical for sure. You have right now, I mean, it's one of the hottest areas in real estate is this Class C Midwest market space, and I think that has to do with the numbers overall. It also has to do with how Class C is defined, technically speaking, and the years that they kind of draw this arbitrary line and say, hey, that's Class C unless you can show these improvements or whatever. And so when you look at Class C, especially in the Midwest, you're typically looking about 38 to 40% of the market. And so it's a huge portion of the market segment, first off. And then second, I mean, uh, some of these stats are are up to date as of this morning. So hopefully they're still up to date as I say this, but they are, 95% occupied typically. You have a 97% on-time payment. You can just kind of go down the metrics, and it's a really strong class. And what a lot of people, initially don't like about it is when you think Class C, you think rundown buildings, maybe the tenants aren't great, or they just kind of pile on these assumptions that isn't true. I mean, we have Class C apartments in some of the best neighborhoods that you could find. I mean, just Midwest or South or wherever you want to go, because a lot of it's based on that year it was built. And so, it has nothing to do with location. It has nothing to do with the tenant. It really has to do with, when was it built? What renovations have been done? Where have you gotten it to this point? And because of it, you get this, for lack of better words, kind of stigma on, hey, Class C is really, a rough property to get into. But we're also, that's great. The numbers are great. The statistics are strong. You still have the other industries that play a role in that. And that's another reason why you talk about it being kind of forgotten or kind of neglected, really. The insurance is really tough to get on these as time goes on. And obviously that's its own industry with its own hurdles. And so you have that, you have the banks that also, if you're going to leverage it, you have to hit those metrics. And a lot of what we look at are these value add Class C multifamily apartments. And because of it, there has to be a value add. That's literally why we're getting involved in it. So you're not, we don't look for, hey, this is cash flowing hundreds of thousands of dollars and it's already operating really smoothly. And it's, that's a little bit ahead of where we want to get in at. And so because of it, you do have those hurdles, and that leads to that comment of it being forgotten, which is, insurance doesn't really like it, the banks aren't in love with it. You can give all the statistics you want on occupancy and on-time payments and go down the list. But at the end of the day, you're still, we still have to get covered on insurance and, there's
Yep.
still things that we have to operate under. And so because of it, I think those other industries also kind of give it its own stigma, if you will.
So what are the ideal scenarios for a Class C for you to jump in and go, okay, we could really make a difference here? Because you just mentioned like it doesn't have to be, it can't be like a really well run Class C already. It needs to be something that you could do add some value to. So typically, what does that look like?
Yeah, so we look typically between probably about 150 and 200 properties a week, and we evaluate them primarily on expenses. And so we have our own segments and our own process where we will look at the value per door and the typical stuff that you've heard of. But where we focus on initially is the expense side. I mean, a lot of these Class C space apartments are run by families who might have collected this or inherited this over the years, and so they're not aware of what property management expenses really are. And I think property management companies do a great job of explaining, a flat fee of 6%. And so everyone's just, they grab that tagline and just hold on to it. And the reality is when you actually dig into the books, you're finding that, there's a tenant retention, and then there's all these fees that get added to it. And really what we're finding is that those property managers are really more like 12 to 15%. So when we're looking at the expenses, we try to find what can be done more efficiently on the expense side. This isn't about getting in and, hey, we just raised rents $1,000,
Right.
because at the end of the day, that's not solving any efficiencies. You're just making it pay more money and then cycling tenants. If you want tenant retention to stay high, you got to focus on the expenses first. And so, we'll look at, what is water and power? And, if they hit certain metrics, we can tell with the systems and software that we've developed, whether that's actually running efficiently or if maybe there are leaks and they don't know about it. And we're able to kind of tackle that on the front end before we even move into a deal. But then also, property management expenses. We'll look at any kind of CapEx that they might have done. And a lot of them, there has been some improvements, but they might be missing the mark on, right? So a great example is property that we're looking at where, they have new windows and new doors, but they still have the same old locks. There's no way to get into the main door. The fobs are going out. They don't have a good network. And then, we start to key in on these inefficiencies that really lead more towards tenant retention. And so, once we get through the expenses, then we really start to focus on, okay, if we can manage the expenses and improve on that, what's the top three things that we need to tackle immediately to drive retention higher? Because again, it's not about, raising rents 200%. It's about how do you manage the expenses, put in the technology to solve the inefficiencies or improve them significantly, and then from there being able to adjust, and with that you drop expenses. A lot of these apartments are under market rent, and so you're able to look at what actually makes sense without driving tenants away just because you want to drive NOI, and you just, instead of messing with expenses, you just want to raise rents.
Right. So you mentioned that you would apply certain tech into the project so that it does become more efficient. How does AI come into play? It sounds like it's more like maintenance work. So then when AI comes in, it's not a physical item. So how does AI help you with regards to that area?
Yeah, so I mean, AI is such a broad topic, right? And that's one of the reasons I think it's such a hot topic right now is because it's like, where can we plug this thing in at, and what can we solve? And sure, it could be conversational AI when you're making sure that the tenant is heard and it's addressing any kind of, to what you said, maintenance issue where it's actually getting tracked and accomplished and followed up with. And I think that is one of the largest driving forces behind poor tenant retention is that there's no follow up, and then there's also nothing actually followed through with. But then also on, taking rent, managing expenses, evaluating these things like the maintenance predictive model. There's also other models that we have that allow us to insert AI to see where that inefficiency is, and every dollar adds up. And so what may seem silly in the sense of having your own IoT to run locks, cameras, lights, all that kind of stuff, well, really, if you're able to save say it's $3 a unit, right? Just in lights, okay, and then that's based on how the system can process information a lot quicker, a lot more efficiently. They can give us the data that we actually need to see versus what we think that we need, and really, it's not driving that needle. That all adds up, and at the end of the day, I mean, you're talking about thousands of dollars that is running that property more efficiently. I know I keep saying that word, but it is what its purpose is. And so, not just that, but we'll use it for determining what kind of ROI we would get on some of these renovations. It's great to talk about lights and cameras, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense, and it might look really cool, but just putting technology in to look cool isn't helping anybody, and we have a lot of people that we answer to, so we have to sit back and evaluate, why are we doing this? Are we just replacing the floors to say that we have new floors? If that's the case, I mean, what are we really getting at the end of this? What's the purpose? The tenants don't care. They have floors that are just fine as they are now, and they're going to see it as raising rents. And the great example of this is the individual who goes to a law firm and walks in and they see the marble everywhere and the wards on the wall, and they're just shocked by how prestigious that looks. And you get the individuals who walk into that and go, oh, so this is where all the hourly fees go. And then you have the individual who walks in and goes, oh, they must be so good because look at all of this. It's very similar in the real estate industry where they look at it and go, okay, well, this looks really good, but if you're putting, granite and marble everywhere, what am I getting out of that? I can live in a place that looks great and is run efficiently and is in a great community. And that's one of the things that we drive, is trying to get that community engagement. And we hold, events and things just to get people to kind of know their neighbor and get familiar with the area. And that goes a step beyond just, hey, we have nice new floors and cabinets, and you can start to actually see that ROI. Uh, but calculating it will always be something that everybody argues about, right? They're going to say that it's all subjective, and And you got to point at the retention really is where you have to go.
Well, one of the things that like building owners will look at will be the cost up front. So how usually what's that turnover? Like how long does it take the efficiency to really kick in order for the upfront money to kind of be made up and then the profits come in or the difference comes in?
Yeah, so all of them are different, right? Everyone has, every apartment's gonna have different problems and inefficiencies. We are very specific about the structure and the route that we want to take to get somewhere. So typically, if using ourselves as an example, we look to hold these apartments typically between like 24 and 36 months, right? And then what you do or what I do is, start with the end in mind. If we go in knowing, okay, these are the things that we want to address. And if we address this appropriately, this is how we can save on it. Now start from the end and back up, right, to the beginning and see, all right, well, we know that this has to, we're concerned about a leak in this building. So we need to put in, our models in and make sure that we don't have, a toilet leaking that is going to cost us in a year that we had no clue. And that could be, who knows how much, or foundation issues, another great example that we've had a lot of success with. But start with the end in mind, back up. Typically, and again, they're all a little different, so it's tough to give like a specific number, but typically what we see is, we want to get, we want to hit the ground running on day one. So as far as the inefficiencies on payments and, rent collection and making sure that tenants' issues are addressed immediately and we understand what those are and why those are issues, that happens from the beginning. I mean, that's the first thing that we're implementing. When it comes to renovations and all of that, obviously there's a lot that goes into it, but typically we see anywhere from like a 2 to 6 month ratio is where we want to attack in the beginning the any kind of renovations that we need to go after, whether it be floors, windows, doors, lights, whatever it may be. Those are things that we can tackle head on pretty quickly. Painting buildings, landscaping, all those kind of things are nice, and we definitely have to do those things, but you're also hindered with weather and material costs, and there's other things that play a role in that. So it's evaluating it with the end in mind, and we always go into a property with an exit in mind. And so if we don't have that exit in mind, then we're not going after that property. We're not getting a $20 million property hoping to exit at 21 million, and hoping that if we can just if we can just put in our systems, everything's going to fix itself, and let's see what happens. I mean, there's a very systematic approach that's structured, and we have a lot of people hands-on, as we're vertically integrated. So because of that, we have our avenues that are responsible for what they're responsible for to make sure we get there.
Yeah. You mentioned a lot about data collection and then knowing that okay, this needs repair and that needs some maintenance and all that kind of stuff. But all that data is collected through what the tenants letting you know, or you have people going on a weekly, monthly basis to do a check. Like how do you know what stage things are at? And then those people would then have to kind of implement it into the system so that it gets tracked in the system.
So to circumvent that, you tie in your own IoT, to be honest with you. So the electronics, water, power, by electronics, I mean like lights, locks, that kind of stuff. You can tie that into your own IoT type of system, and then you are collecting that. No one's inputting that, right? I mean, if you turn on the light and off the light, I'm gonna see that register just as if you were to grab your phone and get the app to do it from your app, right? Like unlock the door, lock it, go to work, worried that, I forgot to lock the door, and you pull it up to see if you did. There is something in the background that is collecting that data, and then that's everywhere you go. And so same concept, we're able to do the same type of system to make sure that, the water leaks are such a good example because you can look at it and no one's going to tell you, or maybe not no one, but rarely is someone going to say, "Hey, I think the toilet's leaking." What you're going to see is the consumption and where it should be and where it's at. And then, there's ways that we found to tie that into a specific thing. So we can tie it into the shower or kitchen or whatever to see where that's actually coming from. And then you're able to work backwards to see is this a leak or did someone leave it on? All this kind of data, honestly, that drives us to understand, this kind of living organism that is the property, right? And I think that's where we're going. Is we're starting to see we're not the only ones anymore that are looking at these apartments like living organisms. And if you can look at it and check the water and the power and go down that list, you're able to jump in front of problems that might have cost you hundreds of thousands had you not caught it.
Right.
And who knows what that would lead to, whether it's foundation problems and then that expands and goes down this kind of rabbit hole. But that's really what we're doing, right? Is we're implementing this technology ranging from AI to these predictive models and
Yep.
even the tangible products to make this apartment a living organism to say, okay, I know that the batteries are low in that camera because I can see it.
Yeah.
I don't have to go there and knock on the door and interrupt somebody's dinner to then send a maintenance guy back there to test the battery. I mean, you can do all of that now with the technology that we have. And I think that's what makes this so exciting is we have this technology.
Yep.
And not to go down a rabbit hole, but one of the things that I would love to figure out, and, and we're not quite there yet, but you see this in Japan right now, these kinetic sidewalks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where they're powering all these things. And there's, not to go down a rabbit hole and spend an hour on kinetic sidewalks, but it is it is wild to me that we've developed just generally as society a manner to generate energy that doesn't require any real action, right? Like no one's sitting there like, all right, I got to step on this 3 times and whatever. It's just a natural flow. And that's where we're getting at, I think, with these apartments is building the technology to where we can get to this natural flow state of, we know once we implement this where everything stands and go from there.
It could be one of those things you implement at the stairway so that people walk up the
Yeah.
stairs and generate the power. Then you could give them a for people who do that and generate X amount of power, you could then give them a discount so that they don't take the elevator.
Oh yeah. Believe me, there's a lot of I can go down long rabbit holes with some of the technology that's out there. These holographic fans are really interesting and that I think if we could figure out a way to implement that in a way that would be productive
Mm,
in these apartments. I mean, that is really something that a lot of people are working on right now. That technology exists and it's out there quite a bit, but getting it to make sense and you'll see it with phones, right? I mean, we're already working on phones that project a holographic image and you can operate things from and so it's a good time to be alive and deal with this technology. It's exciting time.
exactly. No, it sounds like a lot of the tech that you're putting into these buildings are a lot more high tech than like Class A, Class B buildings that they have what they have. Have are you now venturing also into like putting this tech into new builds so that it's already in there at the very beginning?
So the short answer is no. We haven't worked on any new buildings. I like the Class C space. I like how it forces us to be creative, right? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, but one of the things that drives that creativity, and you see this in small businesses, regardless of the industry, is that you're hindered by money, let's say, right? So you only have so much, it's only going to generate so much. And there's a lot of things that go into that. Once you start to have this kind of, unlimited budget, I think it kind of hurts on the creativity side because you can just throw more money at it. And, it will take a long time for me to really wrap my head around some of the developments, especially with Class A, luxury Class A, and being able to understand that benefit right into implementing some of the technologies where it gives that return. And right now, where I see the best benefit is this Class C space because they're just so inefficient and they just, for lack of better words, they're just not something that attracts a lot of investors or especially institutions where they would be driven to do this.
Well, something else that I admire about what you do is the fact that you're not holding all this to yourself. Like most people who's like, okay, I'm creating this technology, I'm innovating this technology, it's just me. But you're going out there, you're showing people how to build like a property tech company. You're showing people how to scale into a very successful company as well. Are you not somewhat afraid that hey, there's competition coming?
No, I'll tell you, there's competition everywhere, right? And it's that old adage, where you're never going to be the richest person. There's always someone richer. There's always someone who has something that you want. And I do believe that. I think that, what hinders us just as a general society, we'll say, is this ideology that I have to keep it all to myself because someone might take it or steal it. Well, the reality is there's so many things getting worked on and so many products being developed and there's also so much money in the world, right? And I think it's tough for anyone to really comprehend how much money, exchanges hands just on a daily basis.
Mm.
To think that we hold all the keys and no one could ever figure it out or, build it or I think that's, maybe a little arrogant and probably a little naive to think that we're that special. But the other thing is when you talk about this and you're able to go publicly to explain kind of what you're working on and what you're trying to solve and how we're trying to solve it, you drive that industry forward. I mean, the property tech industry is, for what it's worth, is kind of a young industry, right? I mean, we're at, I think, a $36 billion industry that's projected to go. I think the last numbers I saw were like 120. I think it was, well, maybe don't quote me on it, but 100 to 120 billion in the next 7 years,
Oh,
right?
wow.
That's tremendous growth in a 7 year window. And because of it, you have so many people trying to solve these problems. And I think what you're going to find is, AI is going to help a lot in driving this change, but it's those individuals that take that holistic approach to implementing it versus, I'm going to make the best lock in the world, or I'm going to make the best camera, or once you micro niche into that, whether it be security or you can go down the list, it's really tough to look at these apartments as we do in this living organism type style, where it's, that's great, we solved that problem, but there's also 100 other problems that no one's really addressing. And if we can keep that creative side to us, where not only are we trying to find those problems and not, shy away from it, but address it and then, create solutions that may not exist really, that's what gets us excited. It's like, one of the coolest things that we're working on, I think, right now is really a smart door, right? And it's something that is really fascinated me over the last probably 6 or 7 months on, we really are in an age where, everyone's so accustomed to your phone and it is a computer for all its, intents and purposes. At this point, I don't know how many people actually talk on the phone anymore. I feel like everybody's just texting and then on social media, I guess. But being able to implement that same kind of concept on a door where you have these I call them streamlined doors where everything's flush, and as you walk in, it's able to read the biometrics to unlock the door to lock. There's just so much that you can do. And I mean, when's the last time anyone's talked about innovating a door? Like it just
Opens and then
it
closes.
doesn't
Opens
get
to
it.
close.
Yeah.
Very, very cool stuff. When it comes to people wanting to get into the tech prop industry, is it usually people who already have a property management company that then builds another division of prop tech? Or is it somebody that goes, you know what, I just want to focus solely on prop tech, and they'll joint venture or work with a property management company?
Yeah, so I've seen more often than not, the prop tech industry is primarily focused on one problem, right? So like a great example would be like your Ring cameras or your tenant management software,
Mm.
where that's technically under the umbrella of property tech. They're not, handling all these tenant inefficiencies. Really, what they're doing is, having a platform where you can communicate without sharing your personal number, and then it has its own routes. And then you look at security, and of course, that's in the security side.
Yeah.
And so I don't see very often where these companies are taking this holistic approach where they're attacking multiple things. And it's not to create, we're not going to create the next ring, right? That's not our intent. Our intent is how, a tenant can go and buy a Ring camera. I mean, you and I can go, to the local store and go buy one, right? That's not really creating innovation or any change. What we're looking at is what do we need to do to create that change, and how do we make living easier? And so, that starts from the second you park at the building and extends all the way until you're in your home. And that's what these places are. They're these individuals' homes, these families' homes. And so how do you make that, more, for lack of better words, relaxed? How do you make that apartment really a home, and make it to where people are proud to be there, and they can really feel that sense of purpose of I really love this place. And you don't do that by, just installing a lock or a camera or door or whatever. I mean, there has to be a whole lot of things that are put together at one time that is proven over the course of time to drive that true feeling. And the best thing about that is, we don't control that, right? I mean, there's nothing I can do to make you feel a certain way that I want you to feel, right? Unless it's some negative thing or whatever. But you get my point is, I want you to go in and naturally feel that way. Well, we have to prove that with what we're doing, but then also with time, and show that this is the right way to approach these kind of problems. I mean, one of my favorite people is Sam Zell, and I think that's also what he was doing. He was looking at these assets that everybody wanted to stay away from, and stay as far away from as possible. And he was proving that you can convert these to places where people are proud to call home. But it does take a holistic approach.
Right. Now, I'll give you an opportunity to kind of let your imagination run wild with AI coming into this space, and AI has been changing a lot of stuff within a very short period of time. What do you foresee, or what do you wish that you're gonna be experiencing in the next 5, 6 years of tech prop?
Yeah, I think my biggest wish, and it is kind of that like magic fairy dust, right? That we're looking at and going, oh well, maybe this is where it'll take us. I think that we're gonna find that the things that we don't really complain about, and I'll give a good example, but the things that we don't really complain about that we utilize are going to become something that everyone does without thinking. And a great example of this, yeah, I'm going to use Alexa as an example, but when you have an Alexa device, right, you always have to say, Alexa, do this or do that, or but you're always prompting it. I think we're going to get to a point where it's conversational, right? Where it's, hey, turn on the lights, and then the lights go on, or turn on the kitchen lights, or hey, turn the oven on to 450, and you're on the couch watching TV. You know what I mean? And I think that not only is that possible, but I do think that we're gearing towards that now. And how do you build that into, great example is Class C space, right? How do you build that into a structure that's already there? It's not a new development. And how do you do that without breaking the bank? Because it's going to require a lot of things and speakers and a lot of connection points and all of that. And there's other things. There's other things that, take away AI that we just haven't fully addressed because we don't complain about it, right? And I'll give you another example. When you look at power sources, right, like outlets, when it's built, the outlets are put a certain place unless you're going to knock out a drywall and cut through studs and move it around type of thing. It kind of is where it is.
It's
No one's
always
really
behind the
said,
cabinet. Come on, it's always behind the cabinet.
yeah, it's always that's true. Or it's not there, right? You go into a room and you're like, where's the light? It's like, oh no, it's an outlet. You got to plug it in. You're like, what? Okay. But yeah, I think, that kind of innovation is around the corner where people are going, okay, is it really that tough to like put it in a sliding container where you can move it 3 or 5 feet one direction or the other, and you can have multiples in there, and it's still up to fire code and all that. And it sounds silly because we don't complain about it, right? I mean, we kind of do, but we kind of live with it. We have forever. And so it's the same thing with doors. There's handles on doors. Why are there handles on doors? Well, no one's really complained about being, having a handle. And it's like, okay, but could we
Except
create
for
out?
except for during COVID.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
People did
fair.
complain about it.
Yeah, maybe I'm 5 years late. Maybe that's what it is. Uh,
It's funny you mentioned the outlet thing. Just you saying that, I'm like, what if they had a magnetic panel, like where you basically put it into the drywall, and you can now put your iPhone or whatever phone right on wherever you want on the wall, and it charges.
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you. So like that's a great example, and that's something that does actually exist.
Oh wow,
Now, how do you get it to fit in the space and all that kind of stuff is another
that's true.
topic. But another great example that I like messing with are the window blinds, right? Like one of the things that drive me nuts, and I think anyone would agree if you go up to a building or apartment or just a home, right, and you have like boarded up windows because the glass broke, and it's expensive to replace that. And so how do you fix that? Another great example are the blinds, right? You drive by a place and you can just see all the blinds completely destroyed, and you're like, oh, we just put those in, and when you look at it from a data aspect, you're going, okay, well, it's like $15 to replace the blind, so that doesn't break the bank. Well, you do that 200 times in a 5 year period. Well, yeah, that kind of does suck. And so, why don't we? And we do have this where we can put film on the glass windows and control that same thing with the IoT, where you can hit a button or your phone app, or yeah, eventually it'll be just speaking, where you can have that privacy opaque
Yeah.
go over the windows without having to sit there and play with the blinds. And I've got young kids, and so I know just how much they love to smack the blinds for whatever reason. It needs to come with like a kid warning.
Very cool stuff. Um, what are you looking for now? Like if you're out there, you're speaking, you're promoting, you're connecting and networking. What are you looking for with regards to the business wise, the property tech wise, the real estate wise, all that stuff?
Yeah, so they're all different things, right? I mean, any city that I go to, it's always kind of an adventure. I like going to places that, are talked about or discussed just because of how innovative it is, and it could be something as simple as the hospitality approach that they took, right? And that might just be in the hospitality side of things, but that translates so well into so many other avenues that it's worth taking the time to go and experience that. And
Right.
a great example, I was just in St. Louis, and they have that city museum, and I don't know if you've heard about this or seen this, but yeah, it is. The coolest thing is so many slides, and there's buses halfway off the roof, and there's planes that people can slide down through and climb through, and all this stuff. The amount of engineering that takes place into building and connecting, and then also making sure that that stays productive and operational is amazing to me. And so, that kind of stuff drives the curiosity to, okay, I didn't know we could do that. I wonder if we could just, take that same concept and put it here
Yep.
and play with that. Now, I'm also going to these places because we do take on investors. So I do meet with a lot of family offices and wealth management companies that partner with us and invest so that we can get these apartments and start working on this technology. So there's that aspect as well that that I'm looking for. And then obviously, like I said, we source a ton of deals every week to make sure that we find the right one. And Class C takes time to close. It just does. Like I said, there's insurance and banks, and there's all these other third parties that are involved in it. And because of that, those relationships are always paramount to being able to move forward.
Awesome. Let's put you on the world stage and you have a couple minutes to share one wise item to share. What would that be?
Oh, that's a tough question. That's a tough question. I think at the end of the day, the message would just be to not quit. We all have a lot of things that we have going on in the background. We have a lot of things that we're working on, a lot of different industries,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of hurdles, and each thing has their own issues and hurdles. And I think we're getting into a time in just life, right? That it's becoming more difficult to kind of see the future because we don't know what AI is going to be in 5 or 10 years, and we don't know what jobs are going to look like. And I think the overarching message that I would have is, don't stop creating, don't stop being creative, and just don't quit. I think that, if you can stay there in that space, whatever your space may be, uh, for the longest amount of time possible, it will work. It will work. It just, you've got to stay at it, and it's not easy. I will testify to that. That it is not easy, but stay in that space and don't quit.
Great words to live by, so everybody remember that. Don't quit. Before I let you go, I got five quick rapid fire questions. Give me the first thing that comes to mind. You're stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence. What would it be?
Man, this is going to show how much or what I eat. It would probably be like rice, to be honest with you. That's my go-to. I'm like, oh yeah, that's quick. I can still move, talk, operate. Like that's sad.
Great.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm a rice bucket. I eat a lot of rice, so
Yeah, me too.
funny story. We my when my wife was pregnant, she had GD, and therefore she had to control the units of rice and all that kind of stuff, right? So I went to that information session with her, and the person comes out with a bowl of rice and said, "This is 1 cup of rice." I'm like, "That's not 1 cup of rice. 1 cup of rice is like 3 bowls of rice, and I just eat that in one sitting." And she's like, "Wow, that's 9 units. You can only have three." I'm like, "Well, I cannot have this issue because I eat so much rice that it's not even funny." But anyway.
Yeah, no,
um,
I don't even want to know what my portions are.
Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey, we love your story, very inspirational. We would love to do a biopic of you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Oh, Woody Harrelson, man.
Nice choice. He shows up at your door and goes, "Hey, buddy, let's hang out. I got casted to play you. Let's get to know each other." And you go, "No worries. I got an entire night planned out. What does that night look like?"
Oh man, this is gonna show how not fun I am. Yeah, I'm not a big drinker. I don't drink, so I would probably just have a cigar and sit in the sunroom and hang out and just talk. I enjoy talking with people, and I also enjoy a good cigar, so I'm never gonna turn that down. So I'll sit back and have a good cigar and talk about life.
Well, Woody is hungry, and you stand up, goes, "Don't worry about it. I'm gonna go fix you something special." What's that special dish that you could come up with?
Oh, if he's gonna make it,
Oh
I'm
no,
just
you're
gonna
gonna
let
make
him.
it.
I'm gonna make
You're
it.
gonna make it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Man, I'm gonna say this just because I just made it for the family a couple weeks ago and it was awesome, and now I want to make it again. We I kind of made my own recipe for this like chicken pasta like mix type thing. I don't even know what you call it. It's not like a marsala. I'm not that fancy, but I just made at home like sauce, mixed it with pasta, chicken, and that's what we had. And I think for the first time, I got a 7 and a 4-year-old to say that they liked the creation. So I'll take it. I'll start with that.
Well, I hope your creations are better than my creations. Basically, I just open up, what do we have? I'm gonna sprinkle all that in there.
Yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
Well, I don't want you to give out that secret, but anyway, um,
Yeah.
give me a number between 1 to 4.
3.
1, 2, 3. So the word is shape. All right. So
Okay.
let's say if you had to pick a shape that represents success, what shape would you say success most resembles, and why?
Ooh, good question. So I'm gonna say a circle, but I'm gonna say a circle because there's no start, no end.
Ah, nicely done. Great job. So that's how success is like a circle, and that's the shape of choice. So thank you very much. Um, any final words from you? Any final comments? And then also, what's the best way for people to reach out?
Yeah, no, I first off, thank you so much for having me on today and talking with you. It's been awesome. So just thank you very much for having me. And
Awesome.
I really appreciate that. And anyone wants to find me, I'm most available through LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And Wise Capital is the quickest way to get a hold of us through LinkedIn or Chris Wise. And I'm the one with all the property tech stuff on me.
Awesome. So everybody out there, if you're looking for prop tech, If you're looking for advice on how to change your C-class property into more affordable and more out of the red and into the black, obviously Chris is the guy to talk to. Reach out to him, and yeah, thank you very much. He's Chris. I'm Fong. Until next time, today is the day to lock your P potential. We'll see you later.